Welcome to Childers and to this commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the tragedy that was the Childers Palace Backpackers Hostel fire. It's difficult to believe that 20 years has passed since that morning of June 23, 2000 and the fire that claimed 15 lives. While many will ponder the fact that 20 years have passed, there are those who will recall it as if it was yesterday. The loss of loved ones in this terrible event has meant that parents, family, friends and the many who survived the fire will have lived with the trauma and loss for every day of those 20 years. Due to the restrictions placed upon our community through the current COVID-19 emergency, and with respect to this anniversary, and to ensure the loss of those 15 loved ones is remembered, Bundaberg Regional Council has put together this tribute to share with the community and to commemorate the 20-year anniversary.
The Palace building was originally turned into a backpackers after it ceased to trade as a hotel. It had another business in here for a short period following that, and then it was eventually bought and turned into a backpackers. And we had a thriving fruit and vegetable industry here in Childers. Backpackers were of vital importance to our industry here because without them a lot of the crops wouldn't have been picked. And they'd been in Childers for years. So consequently we were used to having the different voices, the different languages up and down our streets, and they were very welcome here because they provide an essential service to our farming community. It's indelibly printed on my brain, the scene that I first came across on the 23rd of June 2000. I drove into town after having a report there'd been a fire at the Palace. It was very foggy, smoke mixed with the fog. I drove round the barricades down near McDonald's and drove up to the post office, where I saw a number of survivors staring up at the Palace, the flashing lights of the fire brigade over near the Palace, and it's a scene that's etched in my memory forever. A number of them had blankets around them, people within the town had come and covered them in blankets, but they were staring up into the building. They knew what had happened, they knew there were people missing, and it was almost as if they were willing their fellow backpackers to join them on the street. I walked across the road and saw the police and fireys, and they said, "Bill, this is a real bad one. There's 20-something missing at this stage." So that started the morning.
The night of the fire, I was captain of the Childers Auxiliary Firefighters. That means I'm in charge of the Childers station. And at the night of my role was just search and rescue. I don't know what time it was. We got a page on our page system that there was a fire at the Childers Backpackers. Yeah, I got out of bed and came down to the station, which was just up behind the council chambers. I actually drove past the Backpackers hostel here and saw nothing because it was so foggy. I saw some people walking around, but I just thought they were getting up and going to work. And then we got to the station, got dressed, and we were told that there was a fire at the Backpackers. We arrived at the fire. It was a going fire, which means it was virtually fully involved. Our procedure is life, property and the environment, so we proceeded to search the building for people to get all them out first and then extinguish. And on arrival we saw, I think about 23 people up on the building, up on the roof, on the butcher shop awning there, and they couldn't go any further because of the power lines, so we put up a ladder. One firefighter went up and got them down. You couldn't actually get in there because it was just too hot, too dangerous. We'd been in there before at the bottom level, but yeah, all our helmets started to melt, and so it was, our boss told us to get out. When that was over, we went into extinguish mode, and then we just, took a while for Bundaberg crew to get over here because it was so foggy. They were down to, I think, about 30 or 40 kilometres an hour. So it took them a while to get here, but yeah, we had backup coming from Bundaberg. We had a job to do. We'd done it to the best of our ability. And it hasn't affected me and some of the firefighters that were there. We got a good thing in the fire service where you can get peer support. That's other firefighters come in and they're trained, and you have a talk to them, and they know what you're going through, and you know what they're all about. So So it makes it easier, and we had good support that way through the fire service.
Responding to the needs of the 69 who had escaped the blaze became the focus of the Childers community. Almost every one of the survivors had lost something in the fire. Possessions including travel bags, clothing, identification documents and personal items needed to be replaced, and the local community rallied to that cause.
Our duty was to look after those that had survived, and the cultural centre had just been revamped with a new kitchen. We declared that a place of sanctuary, and they all evacuated to there. They could stay in there during the day, receive their meals. Paul Neville, our local federal member, got Telstra to put in telephone lines so that they could ring home. A lot of them just wanted to hear mum's voice or dad's voice or a brother or sister's voice at any time of day or night, and they were able to do that. And all of the emergency services people had their meals up there as well. So the local community under Donald Duncan come together, and Shirley Maisie, and really put in a major effort in donating food, products, all those sort of things, so that those people could be looked after day and night. We also booked out a couple of motels and put security on them so that the kids had somewhere to sleep at night. And it was hard for me to understand just how much media turned up. It was a worldwide phenomenon, and with 7 countries involved, it was of interest right around the world. And to have the amount of media we had here, the helicopters up at the showgrounds, the satellite discs over in the park here, was something we'd never ever seen before. A lot of these kids were very traumatic, and they were, missing fellow travellers. They knew people personally that were missing. Over a short period of time, our community came together through service clubs and many other organisations to give clothing, personal products, all those sort of things. And it really taught me something about human dignity, to see how grateful those people were to receive just little things like personal hygiene, clothing, just how grateful they are. And until you're standing in a foreign country in your underwear, I don't think you really truly appreciate what it means just to have those normal things that we take every day as granted.
From memory, I think Bill said 19 were missing. So he sent us all out to do a bit of a search around, and by the middle of the morning we were 15, and that's where it stayed. And then the council opened up the cultural centre, which had, thank God, had just been newly refurbished. So there was a brand new kitchen, and it's the only place in town that would have been able to handle the amount of people that was going to happen in the next few days. So we went up to the cultural centre, and it became apparent that we were going to get a lot of people who were just coming in looking, and as people do. So the decision was made to shut off entry into the front of the cultural centre, and only those who were either emergency services or police from the major incident room or volunteers from around here who were actively trying to feed and get drinks and stuff for these young people, and our job was to protect them. And there was never ever a single doubt that we had a job, and our job was going to be to look after these backpackers until such time as they could be taken away or continue on with their travels. So we were in the cultural centre for a couple of weeks. We approached Lindsay's and asked would they be able to talk to the pick-up people they were picking up from farms, and if they had any seconds or rejects they couldn't use, could we have them? And then I went and spoke to a lot of the growers around here and just said, we're going to need help, we're going to need a lot of help. And we just had bins and bins and bins of a lot of citrus come through. So a couple of us had fruit juices, so we went home and got the fruit juices, and there were people 24 hours a day standing at fruit juices, juicing fruit. And this is a very small town and a very close community. And what happened here shouldn't have happened, but it did happen here, and that's probably a blessing for those young survivors, because there was a whole town full of people who got behind them, showed them that they cared, and just looked after them as their parents, because we were stand-in parents at that point in time. A lot of the other parents couldn't get here because they were overseas, but they were frantically worried, as you would be, about their kids. I'm not going to tell you what our phone bill was because they were using our phones and private phones, and that's just how it had to be. But when the phone lines opened up, that they could stay at the cultural centre. We knew where they were. We knew if they were going to get into trouble emotionally, talking to their families, that we were able to be there, just to hold their hand or just put your arm around their shoulders and give them a squeeze, so that they knew that there was somebody there that was caring and understanding.
Hello everybody, my name is Vicky Trudell and I'm the British High Commissioner to Australia. May I first say how honoured and privileged I and my colleagues are to have been invited to contribute to this memorial. The tragic events of Childers 20 years ago left an indelible mark on so many lives. We are of course gathered to remember the 15 lives tragically cut too short too early. For the British families, I want to acknowledge your loss. The loss of Sarah and Natalie from Wales. The loss of Michael, Claire, Gary, Melissa and Adam from England. The pain of their families and of the others may not be as raw as it was in the immediate days and weeks following these tragic events. But I know that the ache of loss is carried by you still. I hope this memorial provides some salve. But one bright spot in this dreadful tragedy was the human compassion and kindness of the community of Childers. That forged a bond between our people. It endures to this day. And I pay tribute to the community of Childers. Megan Hunt, our consular officer, who was first on the scene for us, will now tell her story.
Childers was and is a popular stop-off for young working travellers who stay and get jobs picking fruit and vegetables, tough physical work. Friendships are formed and funds replenished, all part of the traditional backpacker experience. That night, 15 lives were lost, of whom 7 were British. 69 survived, of whom 25 were British. Survivors had only the clothes they wore, no passports, and limited ways of contacting parents. Parents who, in the UK and around the world, were waking up to see and hear the news of the devastation on the television and the radio. I remember most the amazing community response, the local charity shop opening its doors and bringing clothes to the community hall, where those affected were able to gather away from the intense scrutiny of the local and international media. The local news agency printed passport applications for me as I worked my way around those that I could find, ringing parents and letting them know that their loved ones were safe. But not all did survive, and we started the painful path towards formal identification and notification for those families whose lives would never be the same. I have visited Childers many times over the years, the trial, the official opening of the palace in 2002, with some families attending, and on the 10th anniversary. This year, as we mark 20 years since this sad event, my personal commitment was, and continues to be, to work with a range of agencies and individuals to keep young travellers safe. I hope that that is a fitting way to remember them.
I visited Childers last year in the company of Bill Trevor, now Deputy Mayor of Bundaberg. I would like to pay tribute to Bill. He personifies the very compassion and kindness I spoke of earlier. Through his eyes and through the stories that he told me, I better understood what happened, but I also saw the relationship that we have forged since, a relationship that has made a difference, part of the legacy that these dreadful events have resulted in, a legacy where we are better focused on how we support our young people, how we work with the hostels, the employers of our backpackers, to try to make sure that our young people are safe. This has led to an outreach programme that is part of our vital consular work now. This is the difference that these dreadful events have made. It is a positive change. It is a change in our approach and that of the partners like Bill and the communities and the authorities to make sure that dreadful events like that 20 years ago never happen again.
The dramatic part was the few weeks following, you know. We had Prime Ministers, Governor-Generals, Premiers, Ambassadors and a whole range of people coming to Childers, and we had to meet and greet them. Then the family started to come, and that was probably one of the most traumatic things I've ever done in my life, because they didn't all come at once. Some had come on Monday, some on Friday, some the following week, and you were grieving their personal grief with them each and every time someone came. So this went on for 3 years for me personally, and I'm very proud of what we've been able to achieve here. I'm very proud of what we were able to offer the families, the memorial and everything like that, but it certainly was very taxing.
With the propped up and blackened shell of the Palace Backpackers Hostel standing as a permanent reminder to the tragedy, council and community thoughts turned to the future use of the site.
Council bought the upstairs part of the building and the southern half of the building. That left them a commercial frontage to the main street from behind, where Subway now is, and we were able to achieve and set about the memorial that we have here now. And that took a lot of thought. Sam Demora came up with the idea of the glass panels. Some people wanted to have the photograph or that we have a painting. Some wanted the wall, and we as a council decided we wouldn't disappoint anyone. To hell with the expense, we'd do what was right, and we did both.
The skill of the heritage architects, the generosity of the hostel site owners, the creative abilities of design artist Sam Demoro and Sydney painter Joe Pilatus, coupled with the resolve of the local council, were the ingredients necessary to deliver the Palace Memorial Building. Family of those lost to the fire, survivors and the Childers community were all party to council's liaison regarding an appropriate rebuild.
At the time of the fire, which was only 4 to 5 months after I started, I hadn't been here long. I obviously didn't know a lot of people, and we had a lot of issues to deal with very quickly. Ironically, on the morning of the fire, I was actually in Brisbane trying to get permission from the Queensland Heritage Council to remove an old clock tower that used to sit just across the road where the Kanaka Memorial Park is. The Kanaka Memorial Park was part of a grand plan the Isis Shire had to redevelop not only the main street but to do a major upgrade of its parks and its facilities across the whole town. So as well as having to acquire the building and start looking at what the memorial might look like, what shape that might be, we also decided that we had a number of other projects that we needed to do to enhance the Childers streetscape. We had to finish the cultural centre upgrade because the last thing we wanted was Childers, I guess, to be remembered just for the fact that we'd had that tragic fire and had a burnt out shell of a building left in the main street. So it was really important that as a council that we not only upgraded the building once we were able to acquire it, to put a suitable memorial in to recognise the tragedy that had happened, and we had to work with the families, obviously, of particularly the backpackers that died, to make sure that they were comfortable with what that memorial was. But we also then had to spend a lot of time and resources to upgrade the street, the parks, to make Childers a place where people wanted to come and stop. Now, I know that might sound ghoulish, but what we didn't want to do was just have people come here just because of the fact that there'd been that tragedy. We wanted to make it a town where people felt that they wanted to stop. They wanted to go and have a picnic in a park. They wanted to buy lunch or morning tea or a coffee in the main street. So in a fairly quick period of time, as it turned out, although it certainly didn't feel that at the time, from the fire in June 2000 till October 2002, we were not only able to finish the rebuild of the cultural centre, of the new library, a lot of the streetscape works, a lot of the public art, but also, obviously, most importantly, the rebuild of the Palace building and the incorporation of those two absolutely fantastic memorials. So the glass wall that was commissioned and finished by Sam Demoro, and the portrait painting that was done by Joe Pilatus. Most precious memory of that time is the way in which the team of people we put together worked really collaboratively. So not only the two artists that I've mentioned, but Ken Down, the architect, the heritage architect, Bruce Buchanan, the builders, PJ Burns from the Sunshine Coast, and obviously the team of people that I had here, both at the political and at the operational level. I don't ever remember getting any pushback from the council, and I think that was largely due to the fact that we recognised what we had to deal with. We're only a small rural council, and obviously under the leadership of then Mayor Bill Trevor, we didn't get any pushback for what was seen as a fairly grandiose plan, a fairly large sum of money being expended by the council, upwards of $2 million. But we were also fortunate in that that sum of money was matched, or more than matched, by federal and state governments, as well as some of the overseas embassies. So by October 2002, we had a project that we were very proud of, that we thought respected the memory of those backpackers whose lives were lost in that tragic fire. And certainly when the parents were here for that night of the opening, which in itself was quite a traumatic evening, I think by the end of that night they recognised what we'd done to try and pay our respects to their children, and what we'd done to try and enhance the whole of Childers as a place where people wanted to come and stop and not only pay their respects to the memorial in the Palace building, but also to take advantage of what is a very vibrant and wonderful old historic main street.
I'd hate to have seen them just bulldoze it down and have nothing here. The council got on board and the government come on board and they done it. They done it, put it back to sort of like what it was, and it's a museum upstairs, and anybody can come in here. It's magic. And the stained glass windows are still here, and it's gone quick, 20 years, and just the funny things, everything. Out of all the sadness and loss of life. We're in the office just behind you there was I remember all the devastation here. There was this big bowl of water with a fish in it, with the goldfish in it still swimming around. And went through all that fire and all that, and it just lived through that, like unreal.
I think the community and myself in particular always thought this was a safe place to be, a welcoming place. And it shattered our innocence, it shattered our belief that we lived in a safe place. To have something of this magnitude happen in a community that we thought was very caring and very accepting of the backpackers over a long period of time that had been here. It's just hard and surreal to think that it could happen at our place.
At the moment, coming up to 20 years, it's really difficult. I didn't expect that this was going to be so emotional. And we have made great friends with so many of the survivors and their families. We've been over and we visited a lot of them in Europe, and that it's extraordinarily humbling that out of something so bad has come some of the best friendships that anybody could ever have.
Down and troubled, and you need some love and care, and nothing is going right. Close your eyes and think of me, and soon
I'm sure the significance of this commemoration of the Childers Backpacker Hostel fire of 20 years ago has responded with those who clearly recall the events of that Friday in June 2000. I also hope this video production will have informed those who are unaware or even too young to understand the significance of the tragedy or the impact that it had on the lives of so many people. As a parent, I fully appreciate that mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, friends and extended family should not have to suffer the loss of loved ones in such horrific circumstances. What is, however, evident is that the Childers community showed the entire world its compassion, its caring and its genuine concern for the welfare of those who initially survived the fire and for the emotional well-being of families in the selection of an appropriate memorial. I believe the loss of life in such dreadful circumstances was not in vain. The event created an intense scrutiny of the rules and regulations surrounding budget accommodation and its providers. Substantial networking of existing regulations and more stringent inspection protocols has done much to ensure the safety and security of people using this popular form of accommodation. A pledge to the families of the 15 who perished that their children would never be forgotten continues today. We all understand the importance of maintaining this memorial as a facility that may provide some level of comfort to families far away, but who also retain an unforgettable and an unbreakable bond with our community. Vale, the Palace 15.
You just